to Isabel and her attitude. She saw good in everything.
Good morning, everybody. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all officials here from the Ministry of Public Utilities, the representatives of the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, members of the media who are present, and also members of the public who are in the public gallery. My name is Boindradat Tiwari. I'm chair of this committee, and the other members of the committee, the Public Accounts Committee, will introduce themselves in a little while. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, better known as T&TEC, for the financial years 2012 to 2015. This committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. And we do, after any examination of accounts and engagement of the stakeholders, make recommendations to the Parliament. The role of the committee is to help the T&TEC improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and also on Radio 105.5 FM and on Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners who are connected now to this program can send their comments related to today's topic by email to parl101@ttparliament.org, but through Facebook at facebook.com/ttparliament, and by Twitter at ttparliament. So what I will do at this point is that I'll ask members of the Ministry of Public Utilities and T&TEC to introduce themselves, and then I will invite the permanent secretaries here. Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
I'll invite the permanent secretary to make an opening statement, and then we'll begin the questioning. Okay? So would you introduce yourselves?
I'm Gary Joseph, the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Anika Sarah Farmer, Director of Legal Services at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Arlene Johnson Lawrence, Senior Project Manager, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Janet Cupid Sinclair, Financial Specialist, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Keith Serju, Chairman T&TEC.
Good morning, all members of the committee, all the members, all the public of Trinidad and Tobago. The name is Kelvin Ramsuk, General Manager, T&TEC.
Good morning, Janet Richards, Board Member, T&TEC.
Good morning, Neil Balgobin, Chief Financial Officer, T&TEC.
Right, good morning, Riyad Rahamat, Chief Accountant, T&TEC.
Right, good morning, Ian Ramratan, Assistant General Manager, Administration, T&TEC.
Good morning, Courtney Mark, Assistant General Manager, Engineering, T&TEC.
Good morning, Ravi Shukla, Assistant General Manager, Transmission.
Good morning, Rene Austin, Assistant General Manager, Distribution.
Good morning, Curvis Francois, Area Manager, Distribution North, T&TEC.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Annabelle Brasnell, Corporate Communications Manager, T&TEC.
Good morning, Lisa McNichol, Sergeant Manager, Pensions and Investments, T&TEC.
Good morning, Devika Basdeo, Internal Audit Manager, T&TEC.
Good morning, Jacqueline Cheeseman, Assistant General Manager, Human Resources at T&TEC.
That's it.
Good morning, Grace Mirage, Corporate Secretary at T&TEC.
Good morning, Jared Emmanuel Rodriguez, Head Corporate Support.
Okay, well, thank you very much and good morning to you. Before we proceed, I'll just ask the members of my committee to introduce themselves. So when they speak to you, although you might know them, it's important to do this. Go ahead.
Good morning, all. Taharko Bika, Vice Chairman.
Paula Gopi-Schoon, Member.
Lester Henry, Member.
Hi, good morning. Ayana Webster-Roy, Member.
Good morning. I am Randall Mitchell, Member.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. And again, thanks to all of you for coming and for being present. I will ask the PS if you'd please make your opening statement, and then we can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to make some brief opening remarks. As you are aware, T&TEC was formed in 1946 and incorporated under the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission Act, Chapter 5470. It is the nation's sole electricity utility, and through its governing legislation, the Commission has a statutory mandate to ensure the safe and reliable transmission and distribution of electricity throughout our Twin Island Republic. It is also important to note that its statutory mandate includes power generation, and T&TEC fulfills this aspect of its mandate through its operations at the power station in both Scarborough and Cove in Tobago. The provision of a safe and reliable supply of electricity is a fundamental pillar for the growth of this nation. And I think it is imperative that we take the opportunity to commend the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission for its role in the development of our nation over the last 70 years. The role of the ministry in respect of the Commission is threefold: to provide policy direction in accordance with the National Economic Policy Framework as approved by Cabinet, to engage in monitoring of the implementation of the government's policies and programs, to ensure accountability for the expenditure of funds appropriated to the ministry by Parliament for development projects in the sector, and transparency in all aspects of its operations as a state agency. To this end, the ministry has implemented a robust reporting and monitoring framework, and in compliance with this framework, the Commission submits monthly corporate performance reports, monthly PSIP progress reports, quarterly financial statements, an annual administrative report, and annual audited financial statements. In addition to the above, the ministry facilitates regular meetings of the chief executive officers of the agencies under its purview. These meetings are used as a platform to strengthen the reporting and monitoring framework just mentioned. This committee's mandate, Chair, as you indicated, is to examine the financial performance of state agencies. And for the purposes of today's inquiry, the period under review is 2012 to 2015. Although the Commission's audited financial statements for this period show deficits, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The financial reporting by the Commission is consistent with international financial reporting standards. In spite of financial challenges during the period of review, the Commission was able to achieve critical milestones in the execution of its mandate. In closing, I would like to mention just two of these achievements. The execution of the amended and restated 1994 Power Purchase Agreement and supporting government implementation agreement. The PPA and the supporting guarantee were executed on December 5, 2014. A condition of this PPA was the decommissioning of the PowerGen Port of Spain facility. This has allowed the Commission the usage of the more efficiently generated power from Trinidad TGU, resulting in an actual monetary savings of approximately $120 million per year. And then there's the completion of the Gandhi Village Gateway and Breach Castle Zone 4 substations, which facilitates the transmission of bulk power from TGU to the northern section of Trinidad. These two achievements are prime examples of the partnership between the Ministry and the Commission in the fulfillment of government's policy for the continued development and modernization of the electricity sector. The Ministry and the Commission have shared an excellent working relationship, and as Permanent Secretary, I lead a team of dedicated professionals who support me in overseeing the operations of the Commission and ensuring the accountability for the expenditure of public funds by the Commission. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much for that submission and overview, and especially of the relationship between T&TEC and the Ministry. I wonder if I could ask the Chairman of T&TEC if he would give his opening statement, and then on the basis of that, we'll begin the questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning to you and members. As requested, T&TEC has assembled here a team comprising the General Manager, Mr. Kelvin Ramsuk, and executive management to elaborate on or to clarify any of the queries raised in your correspondence to the Commission. Written responses were submitted on January 11, 2018. The focus of this board during its tenure thus far has been to ensure that the primary responsibility of providing a safe and reliable supply of electricity to all customers is achieved, to explore and devise plans that will put the Commission in a financially viable state, and to encourage industrial calm in the workplace. Of all formidable undertakings, I wish that I can say that all is well on each of these fronts. Yet, we think that much at T&TEC is good, and we continue to build on its strengths as we strive to make this utility a world-class one. Feedback, limited though it may be, is that customers are in the main satisfied with this utility. In general, T&TEC meets international benchmarks for reliability associated with frequency of outages, duration, and response times. It acknowledges that some rural areas sometimes fall below the desired levels, but usually these relate to terrain, landslides, weather, and excessive vegetative growth. Street lighting complaints, particularly associated with security concerns, also attract our attention. Improvements to the performances in these areas are attracting the necessary effort. On the industrial relations front, challenges with our financial circumstances have impeded our desire to settle outstanding negotiations. The patience and understanding of our workers are to be noted. The Commission continues to actively pursue ways aimed at stabilizing its financial viability. As a regulated service, you will appreciate that there are constraints. So with these brief words, Mr. Chairman, I trust that collectively we will be able to answer your queries and at the end convince you that T&TEC, though not perfect, is an important national enterprise which, despite constraints, is continuously striving to efficiently fulfill its mandate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you very much for that overview again of T&TEC. And we concede the developmental role played by T&TEC over the years in the country, raised by the Permanent Secretary. And we do acknowledge, as you said, Chairman, that it is a very important national institution, which is why we have this opportunity here for scrutiny. So I will start off with a few questions, and then I will pass on to my colleagues, who will all ask questions from their point of view. I would start by asking the question, what is the biggest challenge facing T&TEC today, and how are you proceeding to address that big challenge? I know that there must be 1,000 things. I've gone through the documents that you've sent, but what is the biggest challenge that you are facing today?
Right. Good morning, members. Again, Kelvin Ramsuk. So one of our biggest challenge is the issue related to finances. We at T&TEC have been trying our endeavor best, given the present scenario with rates and so on, to manage the business and to meet the reliability requirements of the country. So, of course, we in doing it, it becomes our primary focus, and we've been able to manage so far. But I would imagine in the dialogue you'll pick up that we owe certain agencies, one of them being the National Gas Company, and as a utility, it's certainly not the best way to operate. So certainly that's one of the top factors that's engaging our attention at T&TEC. The issue of reliability, as the chairman mentioned, is also equally important. So we are doing whatever is necessary to improve reliability. And while I'm saying we have a cadre of highly skilled employees, productivity is also engaging our attention. I wouldn't want to say different to that. So that issue of productivity is also engaging our attention because our focus, as the chairman also rightly said, is to deliver the best service to the company, to the country. And the point is, the fact that we are here, we're not only going to talk about finances, clearly what we are doing internal to T&TEC to make it better, given whatever resources we have. So that's a factor that is engaging our attention. On the issue of safety and security, I would say that we would have had some a period where we really was not doing very good. But I could say at this point in time, over the last 5 years or 4 years, we have moved significantly forward in that aspect. So in terms of safety, the Commission, I would say, we're fortunate we have had no fatalities in terms of our employees, and we have engendered a very high safety focus within T&TEC. So that's one of the items that is also engaging our attention. So basically, in a nutshell, those are some of the issues. Of course, you know, on the outside, one or two little issues that we continue to grapple with is the issue of the safety of our employees when they have to access certain areas and so on, because, you know, our businesses are 24-hour operation. So, but we do what is necessary, and as a utility, at the end of the day, we have to deliver, and we do, as I say, what is necessary. So those are some of the major issues that's engaging our attention at T&TEC at this point in time.
Okay, you raised finances and you raised NGC. When you take income, expenditure, profit issues, debt, receivables, your development strategy, because you have to keep moving on, when you take all of these things into account, what is T&TEC's reality situation today? What is the reality situation that is the puzzle that must be resolved, the challenge that must be resolved?
Chairman, I think the main issue, as Mr. Ramsuk has indicated, is that T&TEC's, if you look at the accounts, you will see from around the year 2011 to present, T&TEC's income simply cannot meet its expenditure. So every year for the past how many years that is, it is running at a loss. And I think that that is a hurdle that has to be overcome. And as I said in my opening statement, that there are constraints. These things are managed by the RIC and other inputs. But clearly, if the company is running at a loss every single year, it means that something must be wrong. Is it wrong structurally? I think the performance of the service does not suggest that. It suggests that it is providing the service to the country. Is it excessive? This is what has engaged this present board to see whether there is, as we would say in local parlance, fat to be trimmed. And clearly, the amount of the deficit, I think, is really related to the price at which we sell electricity. That price has not been adjusted for almost 8 years.
Okay, so you're basically saying that you need to have a rise in rates in order to meet the expenditure challenges which your current revenue cannot meet. But besides this particular solution that you are suggesting, what are the other opportunities that T&TEC has to deal with the big challenge that it is facing, which is viability, sustainability?
All right, so Chairman, as you rightly said, so even analyzing, just for the records, before I go to the point you're asking, even analyzing our whole expenditure, about 23% is related to salary and wages. And everything else, the majority of our expenditure is related to conversion and gas generation. In other words, the majority of our expenditure is really where we have little control over. So, but within that, we as a utility, I can start off clearly by pointing out, have been trying, even in that segment, and as the PS rightly said, to see where we could operate more efficient plant, where we could save on gas. Equally, we have started to have dialogue with the generation companies because we do have additional capacity of roughly 400 megawatts that we pay for. And we have been engaging at the generating companies in terms of trying to get them to look at that and see whether, in fact, we could work out a mechanism with a win-win situation where we could at least get a reduction in the contracted capacity with the expectation that we could offer some other options to them so that both sides could leave the table at least with something. So certainly that's one of the efforts we are making on that forefront in terms of trying to see how we could deal with that aspect of the accounting.
So you have an oversupply of power now?
We do. So when you look at what we have, our contracted capacity is 1758. Our peak demand is 1370. So you have 388 roughly of additional capacity on the grid. Yes, you will have a small amount for spinning reserve, but really and truly you have, let's do, for ease of calculation, you have about 400 megawatts of additional capacity that we pay for. Bearing in mind with the cancellation of Allotrent, 240 megawatt became available to T&TEC that we had to pay for. And of course, that carried a significant cost. The cost of that was $280 million per year. And that was, remember, in how T&TEC did its load flows, it was not expected that we would have had a return of that capacity of the 240 megawatts related to Allotrent. And we pay for that now.
Yeah,
that's how the PPA is set up.
I noticed that in identifying some of the things that you are worried about, one of them is also a possible rise in gas price.
Yes, it is going to have a direct impact on your costs. I think the other thing the general manager may have omitted is that Mittal left the island. Mittal was a big user of power. So that has compounded the problem in terms of the sales of electricity.
Okay. So have you, based on the oversupply that you have now, have you done any work on where it might be possible, or what kind of growth or what kind of investment you need in the country, or what kind of asset build-up you need in the country to be able to deal with that oversupply? Or are there options for doing it outside of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, Chairman and members, again, it depends on the customers that you expect to get in the system. At this point in time, one of our major customers that's coming on, but their capacity is not as significant as Caribbean Gas, right? And they're doing what they call 19 megawatts of capacity, and we are talking about 400 megawatts of available capacity at T&TEC. But of course, there are other users. One particular user has indicated that they are prepared to relook at the metal situation to operate one of the DRI. So we are not sure if, of course, that requires all the permissions and so on. That's a possible option. But beyond that, we are not seeing, other than the housing developments that are coming on streams, in terms of the kind of developments that are taking place over the next couple of years. So even if we look at what we have, we expect that the generation that we have, based on our load forecast, will be used up by 2024. Of course, we have to maintain what you call a reserve margin of between 20 to 25%. And by 2024, we expect that capacity will be used up. So, but between that time, as I said, the only option is, which is what we are doing, is negotiating with the generating company to see if we could get a reduction. And of course, it could be ramped back up once you have customers coming on board.
So the three big challenges you are facing there then, in terms of your current financial situation, is that you have electricity that you are paying for that is not being utilized. You have a low cost to the customer for electricity, which is a challenge for you. And thirdly, you have a debt to NGC which you need to meet, but you might also be faced with an increased cost for gas, depending on how the cookie crumbles, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yes. Right, so Chairman, that's correct. So at this point in time, the price charged by the national gas company is $1.45 per MMBTU. We had initially pegged our budget even internally at $1.18, but we had to eventually go up to that $1.45. That is a 3% escalation. Of course, that price of gas is not what the market price of gas is, right? In fact, that is less than 1/2 of the market price of gas. So certainly that's one of the issues that are going to come at the Commission. Now, if you look at the cost for gas, the Commission pays $900 million for gas. So you could use that at $1.45. And our income, light and power, is $3.2 billion. So if you do the mathematics, and it tells you, well, in terms of how it's going to affect the company, if the price goes up to even double that value. So that's the issue that that's the challenge that we have. And in the metal situation, we had two challenges. Just a clear thing. Metal going was a benefit to the country in one way. I'm sorry to say it like that, but the point is, we were buying for $180 million. And we were selling for $96 million.
Okay.
That's the challenge we had. But the point is, the fact that they have left, at least they were giving me $96 million. Because remember, even when they leave, I still am contracted to go and pay the power producers. I have no choice. Because I have a contract, whether they go or whether they stay, I have to pay the power producers because I'm contracted. I have a signed contract. So even when they leave, I have no choice. I have to find that $96 million internal to the organization, right, to be able to face that cost itself. But to the country, of course, I could certainly say this metal cost T&TEC alone $1 billion in 10 years.
Yeah, you were serving them at a loss.
Yeah, in 10 years, yeah. And that is at the gas price of $1.18 per MMBTU. So you can imagine if the gas price was its true cost, because that had two inputs in it. So that was just a point to raise in the metal. So certainly, but it has affected us, and those are the little challenges that we continue to grapple with when it comes to thing. Of course, Chairman, we're making every effort wherever we could bring in income, and we're doing everything possible. One of the things is that we do what you call pole rentals, and we leverage just the fiber, not in terms of going the full way. We just leverage the access to the fiber, and the polls. So we gain money that way. Wherever we could get revenue, we're not sitting by. We're not coming to anybody and say, here, what, T&TEC, we just want, any increase or whatever. We're doing everything possible to bring in that revenue, right? And we're doing everything that we could do, as I said, with the board directive. The board has been, one of the first items always on the board's agenda in every meeting is finances, right? So we've been doing everything that we can do to bring in that revenue. But you're talking about quantums that are not very high. So really, Andrew, that's the issue. And the rates in this country is 4 cents US per kilowatt hour. That's the rates, right? I would probably say the lowest in the world.
Yeah.
Suriname was higher at one time, but they're up to 8 cents. Right. Sorry, they were lower at one time. Sorry, yes. They were lower and they're up to 8 cents.
Right.
Now, sorry.
I have a lot of questions, but I will pass on to my colleagues so that they can probe some of the other issues, and I'll get back to you. So, Representative Mitchell, are you able to? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again. You mentioned earlier that the rates charged, that is not solely under your purview, it's under the RIC, but certainly the expenditure, you are able to manage your expenditure. And I'm looking at your strategic plan, and you have mentioned certain weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I want to commend you on the fact that 98% of meters are read remotely. And I'd imagine that that would have reduced costs to you. So it tells me that you're using technology. Yes, and that has reduced costs. And I'm sure that you can measure the costs reduced. But I'm also seeing here inadequate accommodation. And it tells me that, and I'm looking at your staff costs, which are also increasing. And it tells me that perhaps you all are increasing your staff complement. Now, where there is an increase in technology, I'd imagine that your staff complement would also be reduced. Can you comment on that?
Right, so just to clear the air, our staff cost is $900 million. And our employee-related benefits, because it's two categories you deal with. Your actual staff costs and employee-related benefit is $1.15 billion. So that deals with staff costs. Now, what we look at in the industry is the customer-to-employee ratio. So our customer ratio would have been increasing over the years, and when you match that with the number of employees that you have on board, the figures tend to show almost similar. The issue, though, is that when you benchmark that internationally, though, we have, I'll just say our numbers are higher. Our employee to customer ratio averages 1 to 148 in that region, and in benchmark in the world is 1 to 180, which tells you probably maybe over by about 450 people. However, we have a peculiar operation in the sense that I have different sections of the country that we are set up. So sometimes you have to have parallel operations where, let's say I'm in South, I may have a commercial officer there, and I'll also have a commercial officer in the North, and I'll have a commercial officer in the East. Some of the operations, how you have them based on the nature of our operation is in fact so. But having said that, though, the board, and we are looking closely, the board by a directive has asked us again to look at our customer-to-employee ratios. We are looking at that very closely. We are looking at our numbers and so on. And I want to say, we're not looking at, we're looking by attrition, wherever we could deal with it by attrition. The board has asked us to do a paper. We have done that paper, and we have done all the details and so on and provided that information. So that is an item on the agenda and is an item that we are looking at also. It's a factor which could be looked at in terms of cost.
So you're actively pursuing increasing efficiencies in the organization?
Yes, sir.
And that's good. So,
yes,
but
sir.
Let me go to another one, which interests me. Weaknesses, high employee expectations. Can you describe what you mean by high employee expectations and why? And I'm matching that here now with low productivity and high absenteeism. What do you mean by high employee expectations? And why do you think they have them?
Well, I would grade high employees' expectation with job satisfaction as equally important. So they expect job satisfaction. And job satisfaction starts with trust within management. That whole issue comes up. That's one of the items that comes up before we reach to the stage of increase in pay or anything of that nature. So a good working environment, comfortable working environment, and so on. So these items that you see here were actually what the employees would have indicated to us when we were formulating the strategic plan. So we would have had our all the stakeholders involved, including all our employees, and we would have interacted with all of them. And this was one of the items that they did, in fact, speak about. And as I said, these are the things that when they speak about it, what they talk about, trust, right, in terms of a good working environment, right, appreciation for what they do, right. We do when they do their appraisals that you're fair and so on. So these are items that actually came up for in terms of the employee's expectation. Of course, at the end of the day, decent pay is also a factor that must be provided, and it is one of the items that they did raise, right, in the interaction. So this information that is here is also with a lot of interaction with our employees.
Right. Also, the low productivity and high absenteeism. It speaks to a culture within the organization. And I'm not sure the culture should be that T&TEC provides a public good. It's a monopoly. It exists without competition. And it is funded by the government and is subsidized by the government. And there is no bottomless pit. And it tells me that the organization somehow believes that it is a bottomless pit because you're increasing staff costs, yet you're not paying NGC.
Well, so you're quite right. I have clearly pointed out to the entire staff, and not by memo, by actually going, and not only me, our team, or our entire team, and really highlighted the whole issue of productivity. I am not satisfied. I want to be straight. I'm not satisfied, sir. There's room for improvement in productivity. I've made that abundantly clear. We've been doing everything that we can do. Sometimes we are stymied by decisions that are taken at the level of the courts and so on. We have to respect those decisions, but we are not giving up, right? Certainly the issue of productivity is a factor that we are dealing with. Absenteeism is a factor, sir. I quite agree with you. I would not say differently. I would not want to present myself here and say that all is well with us. Yes, that is a factor. In fact, only recently I was at the Ministry of Labor. We were talking at length about that with the union. And certainly there's room in there. And I would dare say decent room for improvement.
All right, last question.
Can I just add a little bit, Member, just for the clarification?
Let me just ask the last question first, and then you can add. Is there a nexus between absenteeism and high overtime costs at the T&TEC?
Right, to some extent, but our overtime costs, so I would give you the figure one time, in case anybody's got. Our overtime costs $120 million per year, right? And when I did the analysis, and I did the thorough analysis, the nature of our business, sir, it's necessary. A large part of that overtime is necessary, right? Because I can certainly tell you, I have gone into it in detail and looked at when we had to deploy our crews and where we had to deploy them and all the details. However, having said that, again, there's room in there for improvement. And we have conveyed that. Mr. Austin, Rennie Austin is the Assistant General Manager, distribution, where most of that activity is taking place. And we've conveyed that to our staff. And in fact, that directive, we look at it very closely, and we have conveyed that with our staff. What we have looked at, though, while I've looked at the overtime, we have looked at our overtime to basic. It has come down, but it has not come down to the level that we wanted. But at the same time, sir, there are situations where we have no choice. I can tell you in the city of Port of Spain, you get into the city of Port of Spain, you really could barely do anything other than after hours, where you have to deploy your crews, right, after hours, because the customers would not want outages. Once you have an outage, you have to respond immediately. We would have had 4 situations in 2017 that were periods of significant weather that we had to deploy our crews, right, wrong the clock, right, because you get your calls and you have to go out there to get your customers back on. So I can tell you we respond immediately. Having said that, though, I want to repeat again, there is room for improvement. Certainly there's room for improvement, which we have been looking at very, very closely.
You mentioned just a short while ago that you have to do after hours. You have a shift system operating?
Ma'am, yes, that's quite correct. We have a shift system that operates and they go round the clock. We have our cable crews that operate, our emergency crews round the clock that operate. Our maintenance crews, we have some of them on shift and the majority of them on daylight. And what we have done, but a lot of our crews are on shift, as I said, the emergencies, the cable crews, right? We have utility crews on shift and we have our daylight crews. When you're doing maintenance though, one of the issues you have to grapple with a little bit is that if you're doing maintenance, especially in the afternoons, people don't like the noise when you're replacing poles and your trucks are there, and so we have had complaints. So we have, there's some sensitive issues that you have to deal with, especially if you're doing maintenance along the roads where you could do it mainly in the industrial zones, but not in the domestic zones. Because remember, our shifts are 73 to 11, right? And that's one of the issues. But we have looked at our crews and how we deploy them, and the best way we can to avoid additional overtime. But I'm saying there's room for improvement. Yes, I quite agree. There's room for improvement.
Could you outline for me what are some of the strategies that you have developed or developing to treat with the issue of productivity and absenteeism? I want to hear step by step what are some of the things you all have done, please.
Right. Take part of it. Productivity and absenteeism. All right, I'll put you on to the Assistant General Manager, HR, and then I'll probably come back. Ms. Cheeseman.
Okay. Hi, good morning again. Okay, so let me deal first with the absenteeism. It is very high. We've developed our absenteeism policy, where of course there's the humane side to it. If it is persons have specific problems, we would refer them to our employee assistance program, because we do face difficulties from time to time. But other than that, we will be monitoring people's absenteeism as we go along, with certain actions to be taken if we don't see improvement. So for example, we do have persons allowed, based on our collective agreements, a certain number of sick leave days per year. So we will have one bargaining unit that it's 20 days. So we have employees who feel that, being absent from work is not, and this sick leave allotment is not really something that you have to take. It's really a provision in the event you're ill. So you would find that people use up the full 20 days, and especially coming down towards the end of the year, if they would have had days that weren't utilized, they seek to use it up. So we have this issue with the absenteeism. So our policy addresses certain measures we will take in the event we see this consistent pattern. So we will be looking year on year to see if you use up your full leave, for example, for 2017, and we'll start off the process with a warning to you. If it happens again in the year after, and even we manage it as we go along. So if, for example, in the first 9 months, or say the first 6 months, we see you use up a certain percentage of your leave, we will go as far as issuing a warning letter. And it could take right up to dismissal, possible dismissal. Persons have been suspended, they've received letters, and once we, though, be forceful with this policy, I could see within, say, the next year or two, we should be able to grapple with, manage this absenteeism. With respect to productivity, we continue to talk to our employees, and I must mention that the union, our recognized majority union, they have aligned with us at management level to create a productivity committee. So we do have some buy-in from the union towards us having a more productive workplace, and discussions are ongoing. We have a committee from the commission represented by some of our senior people. We have 3 persons from the OWTU as their representatives, and they've been meeting at that level and coming up with initiatives. They have now identified certain subcommittees to deal with different areas. And these subcommittees would, it's like a team effort, even though driven by a specially appointed committee. So we are expecting that, we have some benefits coming out from that initiative.
Morning again, everybody. What we're also doing is formalizing the way we do maintenance on our overhead line system. And we are implementing a computerized maintenance management system that will aid our engineers in better planning and executing maintenance work and tracking the work system. So we're also looking at that technology to help us with the maintenance process, which takes up a lot of our costs and productivity.
So that is one type of innovation you have introduced, and I want to commend you for that. But what are some of the innovative strategies that you're considering to ensure that T&TEC becomes more efficient, effective, and responsive to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, what we also have is a collective agreement that gives conditions on our crews. Fixed crew sizes, we still require to have a dedicated driver, right, to take out our crews. And we're also looking to implement something, you know, where the craftsmen also drive the vehicle instead of having a dedicated driver. Correct. Right now, the collective agreement calls for a position of driver, a dedicated driver. So we're trying to move that because you could see clearly if we have drivers doing craft, you know, we have some 100 or plus drivers that we could convert into craftsmen, increase the number of crews, get greater productivity. So we are pursuing that, right? Is that the Ministry of Labor right now? Yeah, okay.
Ma'am, that's one of the most sensitive issues. If I solve that problem in T&TEC, I feel we could go forward in a big way. So we are the Ministry of Labor, but I could tell you, if you go anywhere in the world, you'll get no drivers. You'll find, except in a skilled environment. We have made it clear. We have said we don't want to send home anybody. We have said, listen, we don't want to send home anybody. Through attrition, people will go. But I have 215 drivers, right, with the named driver's position. I could make 100 two-man crews. I could pay that guy who drives, as a technical person, a higher pay. He doesn't lose his job, right? I have been trying my best to get there, right? He doesn't lose his job, and I could get 100 more two-man crew, right? I have signaled, I have said we've looked at Jamaica, we've looked at Barbados, we've looked at Ontario, we've looked at Florida Light and Power. So I'm not saying anything in a vacuum. So we have told them this is that, and we've given the evidence. We're not saying we're sending home anybody who's there. Of course, who wants to be trained, we train them. We've got to move in that direction. So we moved the matter now up to the Ministry of Labor. For the first time, the Ministry of Labor said, okay, T&TEC has raised this as a dispute. We are having dialogue there. It will significantly solve our productivity issue that we have. The days for that, and as I say, in terms of the numbers, we are not saying that it will change, right, at this point in time, but certainly, in terms of the technical stuff. So what we want is our linesman, our electrician, our crew supervisors, all of them must be in a position to drive the commissioned vehicle and get on the job site. Right? And that is one significant one. And equally important is that we want the crews, things like crews leaving the yard early and so on. Mr. Austin has been looking at that very, very closely. Right? Leave the yard early, get on the job site, get the work done, and look at the level of productivity and make sure they account for it. Right? So these are factors that are taking place, a lot of significant factors. Just to point out, I know Ms. Cheeseman has spoken to you about, we have reduced pay, we have cut pay for people on leave when we do our checks and realize you're not on leave, but you're out there doing something else. And we're doing the checks. Right? So our correspondence is going back out to all our employees, reminding them when you're on leave, you are to be home recuperating, except if you have to go back to the doctor. Right? Sick leave and extension sick leave. So we're looking at that very, very closely. Right? So there's a, yeah.
Okay, Senator Obika.
Right, for T&TEC, good day, gentlemen. I know time is of the essence, so I'll be brief. Three broad areas. One, regarding the subsidiary. I noticed that there's a subsidiary in the financials, and the income from the dividends declined as a percent of income from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1%. Can you give some information as to who the subsidiary is?
Good morning, Riyad Rahman, Chief Accountant. The subsidiary referred there is PowerGen. We own 51% of PowerGen.
Okay. I suspected much, but okay, so I'll look at that separately. So TGU helped you do. You want to find out? Just tell me if this is correct or if it's wrong. The the relationship with TGU has helped in some level of cost reduction. I just want to get if that is correct first.
Right, that's quite correct.
All right, so given that, I noticed that transmission and distribution fell in 2015 from 945 million to 695. What was that in relation to? Transmission and distribution specifically, was that related to metal, or was that specifically on the relationship with TGU?
No, that fell mainly because of our accrual. It appears that it has fallen. In 2014, we made a $456 million accrual for back pay for the period 12 to 14. So when that accrual hit in 2014, it would have elevated the operating cost. However, in 15, it would have gone down because the accrual was only $146 million.
Sorry, I'm saying transmission and distribution. You're saying back pay, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because our staff cost is allocated across those different divisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's an accounting function there.
Correct.
You're looking at a shortfall in terms of your load. The gas price, would Mitsubishi plant help take off some of that when it comes on stream?
Right, so the plant will be 19 megawatts. Certainly it will help in terms of bringing additional allowance, in terms of additional capacity that we could utilize. The contracted capacity that we have that is sitting there that we are paying for, that we don't have anybody to buy. So certainly it will help. That would be one of the items that it would certainly help.
And on that same thing, I'm trying to bring my questions within quick succession so I don't take too much time. In regarding the current issues with the midstream players in Point Lisas, CNC, for example, do you supply them, and would that affect your income stream?
Yes, we provide an electrical supply to them, and while one of their plant would be on a standby mode and they use some of the internal supplies, but yes, certainly it will affect us in terms of providing the service. At this point in time, it's not affecting us significantly because we have what you call a reserve capacity, and if they don't use, they still have to pay. So at this point in time, until that circumstance change, they will be paying a minimum bill to the commission.
And they're paying for how much megawatts?
CNC would be using an average, if I'm not mistaken, they would be in the region of about 8 megawatts. I'll have to just jog back my memory. But they're not very big.
So the last question has to do with a social issue regarding crime and the impact that having lights out can affect it. For example, Monday night I reached home in Point Fortin and to realize that the entire town was black. All right, and there's been an increase in crime in Point Fortin, armed robberies, etc. When I stayed in Maraval, when I worked at the bank, if it's and I traveled then, if there's lights out, taxis won't work because people get robbed. What is T&TEC doing to resolve the responsiveness? Because you're saying that there's an excess supply, but yet we're seeing an increase in power outages, which is not what we expect if our country is developing. So I want to know what is the plan to address that?
All right, I'll put down to Mr. Austin, who is in that zone also, falls under his jurisdiction.
Right. T&TEC operates a mostly overhead line system, right? And overhead line systems are prone to various things: vehicle impact, animals, vegetation. So what we have implemented at T&TEC is a vigorous maintenance program and inspection program, right? We do things like infrared scans where we detect hotspots on the lines that could lead to burst conductors. We have a vegetation management program where we clear long lines. But even with all this, there's still the exposure we have being overhead to the elements, animals, trees. And when these things do occur from time to time, we do go out there and we respond very quickly. Our average response is 2 hours to outages, right? And we bring back supply very quickly. But we are an exposed system, and these things will impact on the system from time to time because of the very nature of it being overhead and exposed.
And the last thing I have to say is a comment.
I just want to make one comment. I want to, and the nation's listening. I know the nation's listening. And you see our team, and I want to give you the assurance, including the board. The board has made a strong, clear directive from the board. anytime customers go out, we are always on the ball to respond. I want to give you that assurance. In the background, there are a lot happening. We are not happy when our customers go out to supply. I want to give you that full assurance. The point I think you would be in your mind is that we should be doing something about it to avoid it going out. And that is something we have been looking at very closely. All the increase in technology, we have been trying our best to get that in there to avoid these outages.
One more thing I want to... Sorry, okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This morning we spoke a lot about expenses and made reference to your working capital situation. You spoke about your payables to NGC, and I know that, I think the public knows that there are also high receivables from government agencies, local government, and so on. We spoke about your admin expenses, and I looked at it, 2012, it increased from 134 million to 327 million in 2015, so that it more than doubled your administrative expenses. You spoke about your high staff costs and increase in staff costs. I referenced as well and went to your property, plant, and equipment, the way your accounts are settled, laid out. And I see the assignment of salaries and wages to work in progress and so on. And again, there's you increased from 2012 from 136 million to 284 million. So escalating expenses right through. Coming out of that, there are two questions. What is your working capital scenario in terms of your short-term obligations? Is T&TEC able to meet its short-term obligations? And this is NGC part. I know that's a separate matter to be settled. And the second question is, despite all that is going on with your day-to-day expenses, high staff costs, etc., you do have CapEx requirements. And your CapEx requirements would relate to your age infrastructure. It will relate to your planned exercises with renewables. What are your CapEx requirements in the short term, and how do you plan to finance those? And give me a little bit about the bigger picture and how you're going to meet the kind of capital expenditure that's required, even to be reliable. So working capital obligations and CapEx requirements.
Right. Morning, Minister. Morning again, ma'am. Okay, so our average capital in terms of our ability to get work done is $300 million. And that capital really, given our situation financially, that money comes internal from T&TEC, because we would not have had a review for any period of time. Normally, once you have a review, the regulator would look at the CapEx projects and identify which ones they would be willing to fund. And of course, the rates itself will be based on those projects that they have agreed, based on the cost of those projects. Where we are getting a lot of help, I would really say this is from the government. We've been getting a lot of, I mean, it's not the best, but certainly it has been very helpful in terms of what you call public sector investment program funding. So we've been getting, in terms of, we have included a category for infrastructure and in terms of upgrades of infrastructure. And we have gotten some funding from the ministry in this budgetary allocation. So that has helped us significantly. So present funding that we have been getting has helped us. So that has sort of bridged some of the gaps, especially with the bigger projects like West Moorings, right? You have the DTG project that's ongoing, Pinto Road, right? You have St. James Substation, you have Point Kumana, you have the Cove Power Station. We were grateful for all the help in there because we were able to put that additional machine. That project is well on the way to add additional capacity, another 20 megawatt of additional capacity, and we couldn't, it was well in time, at least in the Tobago issue, right? And the issue is because, I know we would have the issue of, in terms of capacity in Trinidad, but you really need to connect via submarine cable to Tobago. So we have one cable. And when we analyze it, we also want to we already have generation in Tobago. So we want to also make sure we have that alternative. So that has helped us significantly. So on the public sector investment program, we have been getting some funding that has helped us in terms of our capital projects. In terms of our internal funding, our capital averages $300 million per year in terms of our ability to do works. You would get requests more than that. You could get requests in the region of $500 million from the various operating zones, but our ability restricts us to about $300 million, and that comes internally. When I say that, So the question is, what is affected? So what is affected is not paying NGC. So we have met all our commitments, but we have not paid NGC at this point in time.
So then you're meeting all your short-term obligations apart from NGC.
Right, but I want to be careful in that statement. So having said that, while I'm doing that, I'm also curtailing some works also, but not to affect safety and that significant amount of reliability. I have to say that, right? Because I am there holding the steering wheel, and it is a factor. So whatever I can do, I mean, that with what we have, we manage in there. But certainly it would have been better if it was different, because it will allow us to do more capital works, right? To allow us, of course, to further improve the reliability. But certainly we are not jeopardizing anything in terms of our safety of our plant, right? And as best as possible, what reliability we could manage, right, in there. And that's what we're doing at this point in time.
Good. So you talked about reliability. How do you measure your reliability, and what is it per area?
Right. So we have what you call, we benchmark our reliability with statistical figures called SIDI, KIDI, SIFI, and ASI. So I'll ask Mr. Austin, and we benchmark it with other utilities from North America. And you would see, so those figures are all, response time we speak about very often. We measure our response time. We actually track all those key indicators. And of course it's reported on a regular basis. Mr. Austin will be one of the key persons dealing with that. Okay.
Our KIDI for 2017. Yes, our KIDI, which is the average time if a customer goes out, he could expect to be out for. So if you lose supply, how long could you expect to be out for? That is 1.5 hours. Right, so if you lose electricity, you should get it back within 1.5 hours. That's KIDI. And that is an international standard.
And is it 1.5 for Tobago as well as Trinidad?
Yes.
Or could you break it down? Could you separate it for me, please?
Okay, in North, it's 2.12 hours. That's in north part of the country. In the southern area is 1.7. In the eastern area is 1.6. In central is 1.1. And in Tobago is 2.7.
0.7. And what are you doing to improve the reliability? Do you have any special projects on for reliability? Tobago, in particular, that project you said is well on its way. Could you give an idea of how it changes the picture for Tobago?
Okay, in Tobago, we're doing a big project on the North Coast Road and the North Coast Feeder, where we are changing a number of poles, installing insulated covered conductors. So with that project, we hope to improve the response time, the reliability in Tobago drastically.
What are you aiming for?
We want to bring Tobago down to the 1.5, like the rest of Trinidad. Yeah. Presently is at 2.7.
Last little question about your age infrastructure. Your poles, etc. Some of them are falling down all over the place. What are you doing about that? Are you on the ball with your infrastructure?
Right, I'll take that one. So yes, we are. We did a change out some time ago, and we had installed a number of steel poles, and they have been lasting for quite some time. We've moved to wooden poles, and we also have the concrete poles and so on. The bigger issue is in the transmission infrastructure, and as I said, we have gotten some funding, not that significant, from PSIP, and that has been helping us. Wherever possible, we have been looking at our transmission and whatever changes that we have in that aspect. Like anything else, we manage it. Certainly, in terms of the distribution, it's a annual process where we look at all our poles, we inspect them, we look and see whether in fact they're going to fail and what sort of lifetime they have, and we make a decision if it has to be changed. We've been very fortunate not to have any failures of pole falling over the last year or so, if at all. It might be one, if at all any, other than when vehicles or anything collide with it, basically at this time.
Senator Henry.
Morning to everyone. I have two lines of questioning for the Commission. One, based on the issue of contracting of labor. I understand that it's a practice that T&TEC has been using. Despite having a very significant workforce. What has been the cost of contracting in relation to the actual cost of your permanent workforce? Has that been increasing share of your labor costs? And to what extent can you give us quantify it? And explain the rationale for increasing contracting?
Right. So,
and then I'll go to my second.
Right. Contracting cost averages $100 million a year, which is 10% of the employee-related costs. Mm-hmm. And the answer to whether they are increasing or not, the answer is no, it's decreasing. We have trained a number of our people internally, tree trimming. We brought in an arborist from abroad to give them the technical support. So we've been doing a lot of that internally. We've recruited a number of our security personnel internally. We even try to do a little redeployment of our own internal staff. So that figure is coming down. So that issue of contracted costs is a factor that is coming down. But I want to say this and say this clear, because sometimes we make this, we say this and sometimes we want to be clear what happens to us at times. So we have had to write on a number of occasions on a number of occasions we have had to write the bargaining unit and express concern. And I remember very clearly Olia's Day. Right, I had a lot of customers out in the eastern zone. I had my employees not turning out to work. Right, and that had me very unhappy. And I had to restore service, and had it not been for some of the contractors, let's be clear, had it not been for some of these contractors, I would have had people out for lengthy periods of time. Just what I'm saying to you, I've also said to the Vice President of the OWTU, right? And we have put it in writing, and of course we're dealing with it. But I'm saying that these are some of the challenges that we also have, right? So the reality of it is sometimes it comes at you because you're sitting there, you're getting the calls, I get the calls regularly, and you have people, and they really, I mean, Olia's Day is a sensitive time of the year. People don't want to be out of supply.
Okay, and my last and second set of, question, it relates to the succession planning in terms of craftsmen for the utility. I understand that there's concern over the amount of craftsmen, mechanics, machinists, and so on coming into the ranks of the utility to provide the kind of support needed going forward for proper running of the utility. And I understand there's particular concern at the Cove plant in Tobago that the question is, what is the utility doing to have an adequate staff at that level?
Right, so I'll start up and I'll give Ms. Chisholm will give you an overview. So yes, I want to agree to some of what has been said here in terms of our trainees. Yes, our technical staff are equally important, and very important when we look at the attrition and the retirements and so on. We have put a number of things in place. Our training facility has been opened. We have recruited personnel, and we have started the training process there. We have also recruited an equal amount of personnel to do training internal to the compound in the various zones, east, south, central, Tobago, and north. So that process has started. I would want to feel that I could make the statement that I am not convinced, while yes, there's room for adding of personnel, I certainly at the core station, I feel convinced that I have a staffing that is acceptable. Certainly there's room for improvement and training and so on, but when you look at...
I think the question on Cove was not the numbers, but
yes.
the actual trained people.
Sure.
With the right skill, the requisite skill.
Yes.
Not the numbers.
Not the numbers. Okay, sir.
Okay, so we started preparing for, persons who would retire or whatever in our craft area. So in August last year, we would have started back our training facility. We would have appointed 23 persons to begin training. It's a 3.5-year training program, and we have made a start to resume this training. Additionally, we have an initiative where we are training our C-class linesmen. That's like, the lowest class of the linesmen that come in. And we have 30 persons who are about to start training, already identified, etc., to begin a training program to prepare them to assume the C-class position. So we have started, yes, we could do more, and with time we would benefit, a lot of more people would be exposed to these levels of craft training.
Senator Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I ask my question, I want to focus on internal audits. But before I go there, I just wanted to get some clarity on some of the numbers that was presented by T&TEC this morning. On question number 3, in your package, you did give a summary of the persons employed from 2012 to 2015, and it showed that you had an increase in permanent staff. 2012, you had 2,500, 2013, 2,600, 2014, 26, and then 2015, 2942. But then when you look at your property, plant, and equipment values, it shows a salary that is a 2012, 92 million, then 2013, 92 million, 2014, when you had 2,640, 98 permanent staff, you went down to 88 million, and then you went back up in 91 million 2015. And I didn't understand the reasoning for this, because I believe when Member Mitchell asked this question, you said it's because you have an increase in permanent staff, but I'm not seeing that outlined in the figures before us. So you just want to clarify that, because also we're increasing permanent staff, so you have your shift system, but we still have a $10 million monthly overtime rate. So I'm not sure how the figures are being aligned.
I want to get back clear. Okay, so our permanent staff numbers have increased. Right, and I'm sorry, you could repeat exactly what is being asked?
Look at the property, plant, and equipment. You will see 2012 you had salaries. So you gave a number earlier about, is it 90 million, 900 million? Was 900 million? Is that any package before us? Okay, that's not any package before. All right, so the 900 million in salaries, right?
That's correct,
but
right.
in the package you gave us, in your work in progress, you have salaries of 91 million. So is there a difference? Or is that an incorrect figure that you have given in the package?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get that where you were seeing the 91 million. I just want to make sure.
All right, so plant, property, plant, and equipment, item 124,000. 124,000.
Plant, property, and equipment.
This is what was submitted, but it has no page numbers. So.
Plant, property, and equipment.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, she's looking at the
Oh, that's the breakdown.
in the appendix.
All right, so the breakdown, we didn't number this page. Well. So just to be clear, the amount I indicated is correct. I just want my people to clarify. You will clarify. Our salary and wages figure is $900 million. That's very clear, very accurate.
So would you be resubmitting?
So I just want to just double check. The accountants would just. You got it?
Is in the appendix.
Can you clarify?
Yeah, if you could clarify it one time. Yeah.
The figure showing here on the property, plant, and equipment is the salary portion that is capitalized if they work on a capital project. Okay. So this is the portion of that is put here.
So there's CapEx budget?
Right. So employees work on recurrent and they work on capital projects, both. So the portion that they work on the capital is put to the property plant, is put onto property, plant, and equipment.
So it's really an alignment of proportion.
Correct.
Time.
Yeah. Correct.
And what about the last line, which is salaries, wages, and overheads? What's that about then?
That is exactly what I was explaining, that last line of the salary wages.
Okay, and the line before that, which is salaries, which is 91 million, because the one with salaries, wages, and overheads is 284 million. So all of this is salaries.
Okay, 91 work in progress salaries. Yes, it's all the same thing, but The work in progress is there. It sits as work in progress until we actually move it into plant. So if the project is incomplete, it will sit in work in progress.
This is not what is incurred during the year. Remember, capital projects would transcend from one year to the next. So this is the total for those projects that are in progress at each balance sheet date. That is the accumulated value of salaries, wages, and overheads that have been capitalized from the inception of those projects up to the balance sheet date.
Present time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so did you all submit a list of those projects? Because we have a figure for 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. But what you're telling us is these are project costs that is just showing up at the balance sheet, but we don't have that information.
We submitted.
How many projects it deals with or anything like that. So
We submitted, certainly we
okay,
submitted,
great.
yes.
All right,
We
so
will take a note of it.
all right, thank you. So my question is to the committee. There's internal audits that are conducted annually and is approved by the 18-member team, the audit committee for T&TEC. Now, I would like to know when is the last internal audit that was executed, and if you can share some of these findings.
Right, so I'll put you on to the internal audit manager, Ms. Devika Basdeo.
Good morning, Devika Basdeo, internal audit manager. We conduct audits on a regular basis. As of now, we have a number of audits that are currently being under investigation. What will occur with respect to an audit report, after we complete our audit report, we do have discussions with the relevant management personnel, highlight our recommendations to make improvements with respect to the systems of internal controls. And subsequent to that, after implementation, we monitor to ensure that the recommendations are in fact implemented. With respect to specifics that you were asking, for example, we recently completed some audit with respect to our inventory. So this would take the form of stock counts, where we are comparing what our physical balances are with respect to our systems. If there are shortages or overages, we may do some investigations with respect to that, but in the main, it is presented to the management staff to investigate and advise why there are differences, for example, in our stock, and improvements into the internal control system to prevent errors in our stock.
And when was this done? When that audit was completed?
Right.
When it was started?
Yes, we did some audits on stock in 2016, the end of 2016 throughout 2017, and last December we had our end-of-year stock count. Those reports are presently being finalized and are being discussed with the relevant distribution managers, etc.
And to the management now, is the management satisfied with the internal audit's contribution in terms of achieving and maintaining its accountability, the good governance, and effective service delivery?
Right, so I'm going to answer in two parts. One, yes, we have a very active board subcommittee in internal audit, and I am convinced that their intentions are very good. And they have moved internal audit significantly to where it is. So that is, I am happy in terms of the work that is at the level of general manager. Having said that, there are some other concerns that I have, which I have already conveyed to the chairman of the board. I prefer not to say anything further on that.
Any more questions? That's it? Couple of things before we go on, based on what you've articulated so far. We have audited accounts up to 2015, but have the 2016 and 17 been submitted to the Auditor General and made available to Parliament? I don't think they are at Parliament.
Right, so we have completed for all intents and purposes, but the little unfortunate thing is that 2016 is completed. Normally, we submit at the end of the year. We are behind in terms of the final submission. And we have changed our auditors. So we have a new auditor, external auditor, that is on board. So some of the ideas are different, and certainly we're working with them in terms of some of the ideas. Like anything else, it's a very important task that is being done. So for the information we have, for all intents and purposes, the process is completed, but it is in the final stages. We expect that we will be able to submit, I say, by the middle of February. By the end of February.
This is for both years?
That is 2016.
Okay.
Right? 17 process we would have already been putting things in place to start, because we have just started 2018. Right, okay. But we are all up to date with right up to 15. We're totally up to date, and I'd say 16 is completed and for all intents and purposes.
T&TEC is not subject to the scrutiny of the Auditor General, right? You have your books audited and you send to the ministry, and the ministry submits to Parliament. Is
right.
That right?
So that is quite correct, and I'll make this clear. So we have written the Auditor General, and we have clarified that issue. We still provide a copy of the information for completeness' sake to the Auditor General.
That's very good. Thank you.
No problem.
Another matter, the NGC issue is a nagging issue and has been for some time. It will continue for some time. Has the ministry, T&TEC and NGC sat down to try and reconcile, first of all, how you deal with the current situation, and secondly, how you're going to proceed?
Yes, sir, that is engaging significant attention by our line minister, our board, and we have been having a lot of dialogue in that process, including NGC, to work out a mechanism for dealing with that matter.
Yes, you have been involved in that?
I have not been directly involved in those discussions, Chair, but I know our minister is very involved, and he has been engaging the Ministry of Finance as well as T&TEC on this matter.
The reason I ask that is that, I mean, from all the things that have transpired here this morning, and my colleagues asked some questions which help to elicit this response that I'm making now to you, which is that you have a financial challenge. You have some problems that you need to resolve to address this financial challenge at the level of your customer, at the level of NGC, at the level of how you deal with oversupply, at the level of national development, and therefore demand, higher demand for your oversupply. So you have those challenges, but there are some bigger challenges that I see, which is that, I mean, the whole world is moving from fossil fuel dependence. There's a movement to greener energy. Trinidad and Tobago is likely to move in a direction over time where you are looking at other forms of power and electricity generation. Is T&TEC thinking about these things and how it's going to affect them? Is T&TEC thinking about power that it has or is able to accrue beyond Trinidad and Tobago, and how are you thinking about that? And is there a strategy that T&TEC has, notwithstanding a strategic plan, which takes into account the development strategy that is needed to absorb your electricity supply ability as T&TEC as an agent? So for instance, if I have a 200-acre farm, or I even have a small house on a lot of land, and I want to generate my own electricity, whether I'm a farmer or whether a homeowner, how is this to fit into the picture? Not to mention the bigger things, the larger things about government strategy for sustainable development or transformation of the energy matrix.
Right. So, Chairman, right. So, yes, T&TEC is, I would say, as a company, in terms of moving forward and recognizing that is the future, it is a significant item on our agenda. Of course, anything with generation really falls under the Ministry of Energy, but T&TEC is equally there, right, at the forefront with regards to renewables. But before I go there, I know it's a very passionate issue with the line minister, Minister Lahunt, in terms of conservation. Every MCF of gas that we can save will save the country in the future. And Ms. Brasnell, who is our corporate has been going out on a number of programs notifying the public, and we've started the process, and we have to ramp up that process even more by convincing the population that we got to save, because that gas is not infinite. It's going to eventually not be there. And therefore, that is a factor that the country has to understand. It may cost more now, or the process might be, in the transition, may cost a transition cost. But we've got to get there, because we've got to look at the future, and you're right. So that's one item that we're looking at, conservation. But in the terms of renewables, we have a number of small renewable projects that we have right now in our facilities. However, we are looking at one particular one that is at the Piaco airport there, in terms of between 5 to 10 megawatt photovoltaic arrangement. But I just want to say it's important to know these things. Sometimes it's just so that we can understand the impact of renewables. So if you were to go with a 10 megawatt plant at Piaco and install that plant to be available to the grid, the cost would be at an average of 0.92 cents, right, per kilowatt hour. Remember, at this point in time, the domestic customer pays 26, and right, that's it, right? So US cents. Yeah, US cents, right? US cents. Sorry, and our price is 4 cents. Right. Sorry, dollars, $0.92, so 92 cents, right? 92 cents. So that's will be the cost to right, in terms of making that project feasible. Now, when you're dealing with renewables, there's a little concern that you have, because you have what you call dispatchable and non-dispatchable. So what has to happen, and let me explain that clear. If I put a 10 megawatt plant in Piaco, and for 1 megawatt, you need 2.2 acres average of land. So 1 megawatt, you need about 2.2 acres, so you probably need about 25 acres of land, which is available, because those areas, you have areas around the airport that, of course, you aren't able to construct any high-rise arrangement and so on. The point, though, is that 10 megawatt will have an availability, two things. When the sun is not available, you need to start up your plants to provide capacity, except if you go with a battery-powered arrangement, which is equally expensive and is not as feasible with these projects. So it means that you have to have the equivalent amount of generation still available to be able to go back onto the grid when you don't have that renewable coming in, be it sunlight or whatever is necessary. That's one. So what you're really saving is on gas. Of equal importance is that a 10 megawatt plant, and the experts are telling me, will with a load factor, will give you about 3 megawatts at maximum. Because you have to look at weather conditions and all those factors. So by the time you output, you get about 3 megawatts. The savings in gas, in terms of the calculation, is pointing about $3 million with that project. So we've started to look at these things, but the point is it really has to go forward. So we are looking at it very closely. The point I'm saying is that the reason why I've called these figures is because it also is not going to be a full solution unless you really go step by step. But there is going to be a cost. But at the end of the day and at the end of the tunnel, you have to realize that that gas will not be available. Or the country could monetize that gas, right, for a better purpose, right? Instead of having T&TEC, that gas come to T&TEC, right, at 1/4 the price. So that's a factor, right? Yeah, correct. But we have to get there. We have to make that transition. Yeah, that's the thing, yes. So I'm just saying, but certainly as a utility, we are in the forefront. I know the chairman is very sensitive about that issue of renewable, and we are in the forefront of trying to get there. And we are pushing, sir, and I've given you the assurance. T&TEC is not sitting by, we're pushing.
And you have that in your thinking and in your
We
planning.
have that in our top level in our thinking. In parallel to that, we have what they call solar street lights. We've started to introduce them. It's going to be coming in the Manzalina area. That process is already completed. We're just waiting for final approval, and we'll be installing these solar street lights in the Manzalina area to start off.
That has been going on for a little while.
We are moving now to LEDs also. So we have a process where we want to change out to LEDs. The analysis is showing that the consumption of the LEDs is 1/2 the amount. So these are things that we are doing when it comes to the point you're raising, sir, and certainly it's at the forefront of T&TEC. Because if we don't, we are not going to survive as a company.
Okay, Member Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I commend T&TEC for that initiative. I want to stay with the liquidity position of T&TEC, and I want to engage the chairman of T&TEC. So I'm looking at trade and other receivables, and I'm seeing that for 2015, your total accounts receivable is $652 million. And my question to you, Mr. Chair, since you've come into as the chairman of T&TEC, as you have come, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I have yours.
As you have come in as the chairman of the board of T&TEC, what is going wrong with your commercial management function and your legal function? Because I'm seeing in your trade receivables that there's a provision for doubtful debts of at least $60 million per year. And I'm assuming that it is because many of these debts are being statute barred. So what is going wrong with your commercial management function as well as your legal function? I'm also turning one time, in the interest of time, to your top 10. Yes, your top 10 debtors to T&TEC. And I'm seeing TSTT and DeSalcott. TSTT is a profitable organization. They owe $51 million. DeSalcott owes $36 million. That is a private sector organization. I'm seeing the rest of them are government institutions. So the other question is whether there's a perception out there that there are institutions that are too big to fail, so they don't have to pay T&TEC. That is the other question. And my last question is, with respect to these high-consuming customers, is there an active policy or program by T&TEC, just piggybacking on what the chairman just asked, to go out to these customers and try to get them energy efficient? Because there's a building that just went up around the Savannah that is supposed to be energy efficient. Is there a program that you go out to these government institutions and TSTT and DeSalcott to get them more energy efficient?
Okay, Minister. Let me see if I can start with the easy one. In terms of the going out, I would say very little so. I don't think, in a real sense, T&TEC doesn't have a financial interest in not selling its electricity, because as we explained to you earlier on, we have more electricity, we pay for more electricity we can sell. That is at a very mean accounting level, not at a national level. And I'm not saying what you're saying ought not to be done. I believe it is on the agenda. We wish to involve ourselves more in a program of conservation generally, and the General Manager mentioned Mrs. Brasnell working on that particular.
I'm asking because they don't pay. They simply don't pay.
Yes, right. But the breakout shows that a lot of the delinquent customers belong to Israeli the state agencies, WASA, TSTT, sometimes Petrotrin and the like, and all of them add up to that. What I can say is that part of that had been an accumulated debt over a long period of time. A number of the smaller customers that added to quite a significant sum, I believe in the vicinity of over $40 million. And the real question the board faced was whether do you take these 500 customers and go after lawyers trying to collect $1,000 from each of them. And some of them had grown to the extent of over 10 years or more. They became statute barred. And they just kept going on and on and on in the books. And this board then just took the decision that it is really lost, and it was no worth pursuing. So there was a certain amount that was written off in the figure that you talked about. The others, I think, you know, Mr. Ramatan's department, I think, is fairly diligent. I mean, they go out to these customers and speak to them and seek to get payment. I suppose a little bit of what we are doing to NGC is what some customers are doing to us. So there's that situation. But I think a fair effort is being made, and it really is a question, do you say, well, can you close down WASA? Can you turn off the power from WASA? You can't. And I think that's some of the challenges we face. When you ask about some of the challenges that we face, it might be that government agencies pay T&TEC in a prompt manner.
Is there an opportunity to set off? Do you pay WASA and do you pay TSTT?
Yes, all the bills with the save and accept NGC are paid.
But TSTT owes you $51 million. But TSTT owes you $51 million.
This is for pool rentals. It is a matter in dispute that we are actively pursuing. In fact, I believe I met with the minister on Friday and the chairman of TSTT to see whether it can be resolved. So efforts are being made, Minister, to really, you know, improve on that situation, but it is a little more complicated and not as straightforward as a simple business transaction.
Okay. I anticipate that the ultimate sanction would be that the delinquent customer's electricity is turned off, and there is a high cost to that. It's about $500. What other sanctions? Could that customer reapply for electricity? Is there another, what is the cost for that delinquent customer having their account switched off to reapply for electricity?
It is a matter that attracted the attention. I think we try to do it on the basis of the cost of doing it, that the crew goes out and has to disconnect. Then the crew goes back and has to reconnect. And I believe in the new application, there is the request to increase that cost so that it is more punitive. It ought to be more punitive.
Is there an opportunity, technology-wise, for remote switching off and remote switching on, as there is with the cable companies?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. All right, I'll just take that one time. I just want to be fair in one of the questions you've asked. I feel I have to say this. The line minister has started the process of engaging all the public, it came out of the ministry, all the PSs. He made that clear. That was discussed, and he is making that interaction with all the PSs to have a meeting to discuss that whole issue of conservation. That discussion has already started, and well, we haven't met with the PSs, but I could certainly say that he has, the directive given is that has to happen very, very quickly. So that will clear up the issue with regards to even that building in Port of Spain. The other issue is the issue of the bad debt, and the chairman's right. So that issue occurred prior to 2012, but the board gave us a clear directive not to have it repeated again because the matters came statute bar, and we had no choice. So what happens with some of these accounts? So let's say I open an account. So I open an account and I get supply, and then I run up and the bill goes up to $1,000, $5,000, whatever. Then you come and you cut me. I don't apply back for supply. My uncle or my brother goes, and he applies back for supply. So it's a new name. So now you have to try to chase down that account. And that is some of the problems that we are having. You have tenants that go into buildings, and then they go into the buildings, they incur quite a tidy amount, and then they leave, right? So, but where we have to capture that is we have to be more vigilant in the disconnections, right? So you're right. And just to answer the other question, we have what they call a new type of meter that we have installed. It's a Nighthawk meter, right? And yes, we have a number of those meters deployed within the system that we could disconnect remotely. So what we have done is we have done the analysis and we have looked at the customers who tend to come up often on the list, right? And so those are the ones that we would have done the installations, right? And certainly once there are issues remotely, we disconnect. Right, and as time go by, we are increasing the numbers, right? But it's a little more costly, but we're increasing the numbers. So the answer to that question is yes, yes.
I'll allow for one more question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my last question is directly from my constituents. In Tobago East, we have a serious problem where in some areas we have low voltage, and in some areas we have surges and appliances are lost. And there's a reluctance, a perceived reluctance for T&TEC to compensate. What do you intend to do about that?
Right. Each damage appliance claim is dealt with on an individual basis and settled accordingly. There's a requirement for installations to be inspected at certain intervals in Trinidad and Tobago, and customers don't do that re-inspection. Sometimes they have slug connections in their meter bases and things like that. That could cause their own appliances to get damaged. Right? We don't cover for act of God, lightning strikes and things like that. Could that also travel along the system that we have no control of that will damage people's appliances. But we do compensate for damage appliance claim when we find that we are the cause of the customer's damage appliance. I will have to investigate that voltage problem. Yeah,
one comment again, Chairman only sitting there, but that was one of the items you've raised, Chairman, with regards to getting the appropriate monitoring tools to go and check these voltages. And we have been getting a lot of complaints. That's another issue that we are looking at very closely. Yes, we are not happy about it at all. And certainly we look at it, especially in Tobago. Yeah, I give you that assurance, and I would certainly record it and look at it again.
Thank you, Chair. My question is it's something that affects persons generally, and it's not about if there is a force majeure, so if there is a natural disaster or anything like that. We know T&TEC will come in, and if there are trees that are near to lines after significant periods of rain, etc. But under normal circumstances, persons are saying that if they call T&TEC, there's a tree that is by a power line, they want to cut it, T&TEC is advising them that they should cut it, but not doing so until they must pay on their own and get someone else to do it. Is this accurate, or is this someone? Because you know what could end up happening is persons getting PJs to cut trees that they should have done on the job.
All right, so I could answer in twofold. So one, once that tree is, so we've had calls where customers have called us about cutting trees, and when we have done the investigation, realized those trees are not a threat to our infrastructure. So we don't go and cut at all, right? We also expect that the customer, if you're planting a tree, that you will do whatever is necessary to keep it clear from the lines. And if you have to do the necessary tree trimming to avoid it coming in contact with the lines, certainly that will be the ideal thing to avoid the trees from coming into the line. However, once we have to respond, there's no charge. So there's no charge. Once the tree is a threat to the Commission's infrastructure, there is no charge. So that is definitely our position with regards to that.
A quick one. What percentage of the population is still without power?
1.5%.
And what attention is being given to those areas?
Right. So together with T&TEC, so we would have had the request from customers. I don't know, you would have seen the one in Plum Road. That one in particular, though, in Plum Road, we did give them a course in 2016, but they didn't pay the cost. You know, we're guided by the regulator and guidance in terms of giving cost to customers and so on. And so we've done that. We've complied with our requirements, but unfortunately, they did not come forward and make any payments. So the job remains outstanding. But on the whole, wherever possible, I know there's twofold. There's the option of the electrification program that the ministry offers. There's a means test. The ministry will probably guide you on the means test for customers who really cannot afford. I could tell you, and where I sit there, I've seen a lot of correspondence coming from the Ministry of Public Utilities where they have been given approvals. But like anything else, I am sure that they're looking at the means test and they're looking at whether in fact the people are capable of funding the job and so on. So that definitely is a factor. I know that the ministry also have the solar project that looks at these areas. So Madam Minister, there are areas where you have very remote locations where to get to some of the customers is quite costly. Some of the locations could take you as much as 30, 40, 50 poles. So, and there's a cost, right? And well, I mean, today's discussion, I mean, majority of it is on cost, right? And there is a formula and a mechanism that we work out in terms of charging the customers, and we do that. We do comply.
Just quickly, it may not be your call, but what's to become of that building on Rising Road? The plant that is discontinued? Yes.
Right. So we have twofold. We have constructed a building on 35 Rising Road, right? 35 Rising Road, and our field staff is in that location. At the building adjacent to PowerGen that we occupy, which is the administrative building, we have been looking at a number of options, and the manager of the North seems to be convinced that the best option is Benbow Road to start the construction of a building. We're behind with that, so I will probably have to bend my head a little bit of shame with regards to that, but certainly we have to move forward with that project. Yeah.
Senator Ramkisu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to the procurement procedures, there is procurement without tender. And I want to know if this is a rare practice and how many projects are under this, because there is under 18.1.3 services and supplies retained on contracts, and there's a list, and this could go to more than $1 million. So.
Right. So we have a pre-qualification process, and so we advertise, and we have a number of so it's public. This is publicly advertised, and not only once. On a number of occasions, we would have publicly advertised our pre-qualifications, and we have brought in. Am I going correct?
No,
or?
you're not.
Right.
This is under procurement
apologies.
without tender.
So,
this method is used when contracts have been awarded, services have been retained by the board. It is not cost-effective to be tendered, and it is for relatively short. But the thing is, it can go up to $5 million, but the board has to approve it. And there's other things that has long-term contracts too that can go over $1 million, which the general manager needs to direct. So this is what I'm asking about. How many projects follow this method of procurement without tender?
Right. So I would say without tender, you probably have about 5% that follow the process. And yes, it is a necessary item also, because what you have is direct suppliers. Sometimes you buy a particular equipment from GE or from ABB, right? So you have a part that you have to replace, you go directly to the supplier. So there's a direct process that engages our attention. The tendering procedure clearly identifies that process. But of course, it's avoided wherever necessary. We avoid it wherever we could go public. That is our standard process, public engagement of our tenders. But we have had situations where we have had to go with direct purchasing.
Mr. Ramsrock, with all due respect, you're a little bit off.
Yeah, I'm trying to get, okay.
It's on fuel, bulk power, leases, legal fees, medical fees, telephone bills, advertising, transport services, gasoline, cleaning offices, employee benefits, and loans. So all of these are under this section, procurement without tender.
Right.
So that's what I'm asking, what
So
kind of cost are we looking at? Because if you say it's 5% of a project, what kind of cost are you looking at?
Right. In terms of cost and in terms of figures, I would put it in the region, it could be in the region of, let's say, in the case of fuel, which is one of the major factors whenever we have to deal with Cove in Tobago, I would put it in the region of about $30 million, $30 to $50 million. It could be in that region.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Maybe I think I need to see, well, is this a one contractor, or how many projects are you looking at $30 million?
So take, for example, fuel. We go to the national MP, and we purchase fuel directly for the Cove power station. Remember that there's an alternate fuel, they have diesel. So whenever there's issues with the gas, we purchase diesel directly from national.
Would you be able to share this with the committee?
Oh, certainly, yes.
Okay, anything you promised to the committee, please make sure and comply in
I've
writing.
taken notes, so yes.
Yes. On the issue of overtime, I just want a quick response. I mean, isn't it possible, you said T&TEC was a 24-hour operation.
Yes, sir.
And you have a daytime staff deployed, a daylight,
yes, sir.
Right, staff deployed. Isn't it possible to manage your field, the people in your employ who are not administrative, they're involved in field work? Isn't it possible to manage these people by assignments to shifts that would then change the overtime requirement in a 24-hour cycle?
Yes, sir. So we have our entire cable department is on shift. Our entire emergency section is on shift. We have a number of utility crews on shift, and we have our street lighting crews on shift. But there are also, we are looking at closely other crews.
No, so what costs the overtime then?
Right. So you would have overtime if you have to deploy. Remember, even if you have take for example an emergency crew, or you have outages, you may have 3 crews rostered to work in a particular shift, but the volume of work is now exceeding the that's right, and therefore you have to call out crews. As I said, there were 4 occasions during that month when we had the major flooding, but we moved in there. We did what we had to do, and we moved in there wherever we could. You would have noticed also we bought these trailer mobile substations. Wherever possible, we used them to avoid where we could put on supply and then go back the next day and do whatever work. So, but the point is, even though you have your crews, you may have to call out crews because they're on shift. So you may have to call out additional crews given the volume of work. And what we also do is that there may be some area affected more than others, so we move crews from one area to the other. And then you may have a crew working 7 to 3, but because of where they are, they may either be in Tobago or some other area, you have to continue them because the workload, you have no choice because you have to continue them to get the job completed because they would have started the process and so on. And to actually deploy another crew wouldn't make sense in some of the cases.
All right. And final question. Where do you, I mean, you outlined some of the problems, the challenges, and how you're trying to address them. But where are the creative opportunities that you see? Is there any?
As I said, in terms of making changes, my biggest creative opportunity is that issue with the driver. So it starts with the driver, the issue with the driver.
Okay.
If I can achieve that, sir, I'll be, and as I said, it's a win-win situation throughout. If I can achieve that, I can make an additional 100 crews, 2-man crews, or while I'm here, we talking costs. I know the population, 2 issues the population has been complaining about in a big way, street lighting, right? They have been coming at me with street lighting, and I feel badly about it, right? And the other issue is the call center. We have done something about the call center. We've introduced an app. Right, we have a total of nearly 5,000 people have already downloaded the app. Right, so people are starting to use the app. We've made changes with the call center. So that has started to create an improvement. So that's one. If I can do that and I can get that aspect of things going, fine. Then the issue of productivity, convincing my employees to make sure at least they get out on the job site early o'clock, right? Get on the job site, actually get the productive work done, right? Then the issue of absenteeism. I am saying it's a concern that I have. We are doing something about it. We're doing something very serious about it. And in the coming months, when I looked at my list of extended employees with extended sick leave, it would have crossed about 100 or 300. 300 extended sick leave. Extended sick leave, Chairman, sir, right? That is not good at all, right? It's not good at all, at all. So
Can you get the cooperation of unions in this matter?
Yes, we are having dialogue with them. They are in a committee involved with productivity, so they are working with us, right? But like anything else, at the end of the day, management has to do whatever is necessary.
Yes.
Certainly, the union is an equally important partner, and we're making every effort. But at this, as we are saying, now it's not as if it's happening nowhere. We have been doing these things over and over and trying our best to see how we can achieve some of these issues. We've been getting, we also get judgments. We have no choice. We have to comply, and we respect the view of those judgments, right? But we are not stopping, right? But it is concern. I want to say that. I don't want you to think that I am here to say everything is nice and good. It's not, and we're certainly making every effort.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much. I want to thank you for your full participation and cooperation. We appreciate that very much. I think I can speak on behalf of the committee to say that I felt we got full and complete answers to the things that we asked. And do you have some commitments to us in terms of questions to be answered? Please do that. If there are any other questions that members asked that we might like to probe, I didn't raise half of the questions that I had on my list because some of the issues came out and I didn't want to just pursue them for the sake of asking the question. But there may be other questions that members have which we may write to you and ask for submissions on. We want to thank you very, very much for your cooperation this morning and for making the information available to the public. At the end of the day, remember, all government's money is really the citizens' money, taxpayers' money. And the citizens demand a service. They demand reliable service. They want electricity is as essential as water today. It supports everything that people do, and therefore this is a truly essential service. And people want to know that the company is being efficiently and effectively run, that workers are productive, that they are going to get service, they are going to have support when things go wrong, like when they don't have electricity or when there's a problem. And for that reason, we're happy that the answers that you shared would now be available to the public, and they would know what's happening in T&TEC, which is their institution as much as ours. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it very much. Mr. Ramkissoon, I assure you, my apologies, I assure you I'll get all the responses to you.
What's that, the next? Okay, this meeting is now suspended. Thank you. Yeah, that's okay.